President Trump is pushing for new legislation that he says will prevent non-citizens from voting in federal elections, though it's already illegal and instances of non-citizens voting are rare. Over the weekend, the president made baseless claims about rigged and stolen elections. He says a bill is needed that would enforce photo ID requirements for voters, as well as require Americans to show proof of citizenship in person to register to vote in federal elections. Now, some experts say this would have implications for millions of Americans who don't have access to certain documents like a passport or their birth certificate, or who have changed their names. CBS News election law expert and political contributor David Becker pushed back on the president's critique of elections on Face the Nation Sunday.
Well, not only are our elections not rigged, they're as transparent and verifiable and as secure as they've ever been, no matter whether you like the outcome or not. And we're seeing disinformation being spread, in this case by the President of the United States, targeted at his own supporters, at others who might not like the outcome of elections. And unfortunately, some are believing it.
CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi joins us now from our Washington bureau. So why is the president pushing this legislation at this point in his second term, and does he have support?
Well, Lindsay, it's good to be with you. It appears the president does have enough support for this legislation, this SAVE Act. If you'll remember a few weeks ago when they were dealing with the government shutdown, that partial shutdown that we had, and those funding bills, part of the reason why it could have gotten held up was because some Republicans in the House wanted to bring this legislation forward. This has passed the House several times, but it now appears the Senate is poised to take this up as well. And the timing is interesting because it is ahead of the midterms, right? The 2026 midterms. Where the president has already advocated for gerrymandering in several states so that they could potentially insulate the number of GOP losses. That is a whole separate topic, but the president is very interested and keen on keeping the House and the Senate under GOP control this year. And this is yet another way in which the president is advocating for change ahead of this year's election. So what would it do? It would ask citizens to require proof of citizenship before they vote. That could be a passport, a real ID, other forms of ID like a birth certificate, and it would be quite notable for that to be implemented. Now, many states already do implement that, but this could potentially add another federal layer of complications onto local elections. So something to watch very closely as this may be taken up for debate very soon.
And over the weekend, the president had some harsh words for U.S. Olympic skier Hunter Hess, called him a, quote, a real loser after Hess spoke out in Italy against the current political climate here in the U.S. And the president also wasn't happy with Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show. He called it absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever, among a few criticisms. Does the president here run the risk of alienating voters ahead of the midterms with words like these?
You know, it is a good question. Certainly, these true socials for people who are not always following what's going on out of this White House can be jarring, especially when it's something as public like the Super Bowl halftime show or the Olympics, where many Americans are tuning in. And it's somewhat of a time, really, at least at the Olympics, rather, for unity, for supporting Americans who are on the global stage and representing the U.S. in their sport. As far as alienating, though, you know, the president has such a very strong voter base who continues to stay with him. I'm reminded during the campaign during 2024 being in Madison Square Garden when that comedian Kill Tony made a comment about Puerto Rico and calling it a floating island of garbage or something to that effect. And people were interested to see if that would have any impact on Trump's voters. And it really didn't. So to this question of whether or not it could impact the voters, we'll have to wait and see. But as of so far, there's really been little indication that this would have a change in Trump's voter base. But it is important because it does speak to those Latino voters who were so critical to Trump's election in 2024, and really just a new part of his voter base that he was able to create and take on. So we'll have to see if that actually has impact at the voter, at the polling places come November.
Okay, Olivia Rinaldi, thank you.